Hello everyone, my name is Jane and welcome to Audiobook Recommendations. I love audiobooks so much. I always say it, but I just listen to so many every month. They're so easy and you can do it while you are doing other stuff, which is so cool. And because I love audiobooks so much, I have a series on my channel, Audiobook Recommendations. And if you didn't watch the first recommendation video, you can check it here. There were so many really good recommendations in this video, also new releases. I really recommend you also to watch this video, but today I'm coming with another recommendations video and I'm going to share with you my recently read audiobooks that I really loved and that I think that are really good to listen to. Now all the audiobooks today are or romance or thrillers because I feel like overall contemporary books are the best to read in audio. Contemporary are just the easiest to listen to and the easiest to understand. But before we get to the romance and thriller books, I want to start with the only book that isn't one of those genres, and this is a fantasy book. Fantasy what? How can you read fantasy in audiobook and still understand everything? So for this I have These Witches Don't Born by Isabel Sterling, and if you are like me, someone who really loves fantasy and someone who really loves audiobooks, but you can't listen to fantasy because it's always so confusing, if yes, this book is for you because the fantasy here was just so easy to listen to. Basically this is a contemporary fantasy and also romance, and here we are following a teenager, and this teenager is a witch. There is a lot of drama also in her personal love life and also in her fantasy life. This is a sapphic book. The main character needs to deal with her ex-girlfriend, and there is also a new girl in town, so there is a lot here. But the thing is that the main element of the story is the fantasy. The fantasy is the biggest plot here. The fantasy was just so easy to understand. Again, it's a contemporary fantasy, so it's logical that it's more easy to understand, but I find that also contemporary fantasy usually are hard to read in audiobook, and usually I read them with the text, not only the audiobook, but you can listen to this book only on audio, 100% only on audio, and still understand everything. And yes, this book was just so good. It had an amazing plot, such adorable and cute characters, and just overall it's a really feel-good YA fantasy that I really loved, and I was really surprised from how much it delivered. And this is also a first book in a duology, so keep it in mind. But yes, I just love fantasy. I never can listen to fantasy in audiobooks, and I think this is the only fantasy that I ever read. It was fully understandable in audiobook, and it was just so fun. I read it in one day because I couldn't stop listening to it. And yes, now let's get to the rest of the genres. I'm going to start with the romance books, and in the end will be the thriller audiobooks. But let's start with one of my most favorite adult romances that I read this year, and this is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. And I love this book so much. Definitely one of my most favorite audiobooks that I ever listened to. It was just such a fun and enjoyable read. Another book that I finished in a day or two because I just couldn't stop listening to it. And basically in this story we're following a 27 years old woman, something like this, and she never worked. She always got money from her stepfather and never was really independent. And in the beginning of the story she's getting herself arrested, and then her mother and stepfather are deciding to send her to a port town where she will be running a pub and earning her own money. Now this port town is the port town where her father that passed away was living. So this is a lot about family and about her connection to her father, but also it's a really steamy romance. The love interest, the male, is a fisherman, and this is just such a good romance story. The chemistry between them, everything in their relationship felt so genuine and so good and just so in place. I really love the characters and the plot. I just feel like everything here was really perfect. This is a new release, and I see this book is getting a lot of hype, and I think that it's definitely worth up all of the hype. It was just so good, and again one of my most favorite adult romances that I read this year. I already recommended it in a video or even two in the past because I just loved it so much, and definitely amazing on audiobook, just so fun. The narrators were really good, and I loved it so much. And the next recommendation is a YA romance, and this is The Lucky List by Rachel Lippincott. This is a coming-of-age story about a teenager who her mother passed away not a long time ago, and since there she drifted apart from all of her friends, and also her relationship with her father wasn't the best. And this is just her story about her grief and how to deal with the death of her mother. And this is also a sapphic romance story. The main character is meeting a new girl in town, and together they find a lucky list that the mother of the main character wrote when she was a teenager. It's basically a bucket list, so the main character of the story tries to complete this bucket list, and the goal is for her to feel more connected to her mother. And it was just a really adorable read. I do read a lot of YA coming-of-age stories. This is definitely one of the YA coming-of-age stories that touched me the most. It was just really emotional, but just really good. I felt like everything in the story was in place. I really felt connection to the characters, and I was worried and sad for them. I just feel like overall this is those kind of books that while you are listening to it, you are just smiling because you are really enjoying listening to it. And I just really love this book. I feel like it's a really good coming-of-age story, especially with all the dealing with the death of the mother of the main character. It was just really emotional, but just really fun. And yes, definitely YA romance that I really loved and really recommend. And also The Lucky List is also a new release. So if you're looking for new releases, this is a really good one. Okay, so the next book is a book that I actually listened to only this week. So this is the last addition to this recommendations video. And this is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I really love Christina Lauren's writing style, and I feel like they have books that I really love and some books that I really don't love, but this is definitely one of my most favorite books that I read by them. And the concept of the story is really cool because this is basically an adult romance, and we are following a main character that is meeting with someone who works in a company of a DNA tests. Basically, this company makes DNA tests and they match DNA of people and give them score of their match. So basically, in this way, you can find your soulmate and the one that you are most compatible with. Now, this is enemies to lovers because the main character of the story does this DNA test, and then she gets a really high score with the CEO of the company, the guy that she hates, and it was just such an enjoyable read. The main thing that really impressed me is that all the technical and biological explanations of these DNA tests just felt really logical to me. I feel like they made a really good research with this book. Just everything really felt logical and actually true. It was just really cool. I feel like the whole concept is really cool, like a DNA test that matches couples instead of a regular dating app. It just feels so cool. And yes, I just love the characters. It isn't a mind-blowing book. I just feel like this is those kind of books that the characters are goofy and adorable. You just can read and pass your time and just smile and have a good time with it. Also, usually, at least the books that I read from Christina Lauren are books with dual POV, the man and the woman. But in this one, we had only one POV, and I actually really liked it. I felt it was really good for this kind of story. And yes, I just love this story. I think that the audiobook is really good and just really fitting to this writing style. And yes, I just really love this nerdy love story. The next book is another YA romance book, and this is November 9 by Colin Hoover. Now, this is the only book out of this list that I didn't listen to the whole book in audio, just parts of it. But I still think that this is a really good book to listen fully on audio because just the writing style is really good on audiobook. I love Colin Hoover so much. She is one of my most favorite authors. Her writing style is really good on audio. This is a dual POV story, so I feel like the two narrators were really good and just did a really good job expressing the emotions of the main characters. And basically in this story we're following two teenagers that are meeting in November 9. And because of different reasons they can't really be together with each other because they are living in different states, but they are deciding to meet each year only one time on November 9. So we're following every year November 9 when they're meeting. And it just was a really cool and unique concept because I never read a book that takes place only in one day of the year. I just love this book so much. Definitely one of my most favorite books by Colin Hoover. And yes, it's just a YA romance with twist, and it's more sad than a regular YA romance. So be sure to know that you probably will cry from this book. But yes, I just love Colin Hoover. I feel like her writing is really good to listen on audio. Because I listened to half of the book on audio, I can tell you definitely that the narrators did an amazing job. Now the next book is the last romance book on this list before we get into the thrillers. And this is The Quiz Wanchen by Ellen Hong. This is another nerdy adult romance. And in this story we're following a woman, and this woman has autism, and basically she really loves her job, but she never was in a relationship, and all of her life is only this job, and her parents really want her to date someone because they are really worried for her. And she basically rents a guy from a dating app, like a fake dating app, and she pays him to teach her how to be in a relationship. This book is really steamy, like the steaminess there, the chemistry there, everything was really good. Honestly, it isn't one of my most favorite books that I read this year, but this book gets so much hype, and I honestly understand understand it. Like, I feel that if you won't love it, you would at least really enjoy it, which is still pretty amazing. I feel like the audiobook was really good. It was just really nerdy and really fun, like just a really fun, steamy romance. And also, if you love the soulmate equation, I think you would really love the kiss quotient. And also the opposite, I just found that the vibes of the books are pretty similar. Like, I do think that the kiss quotient is way more steamy. Like, there wasn't any steaminess in the soulmate equation, but I just feel like the whole nerdy vibe was pretty similar. Like, I felt that the two main characters are pretty nerdy. Again, in the quiz quotient, it was more nerdy and more steamy. It was just a lot more, but I still think that if you loved one of them, you would really like the other one. So just recommendations if you already read one of those. But yes, the quiz quotient was so fun. This is also a first book in a trilogy, I think. I'm really excited to get to the second one. The first one was really fun. And again, it's a really hyped up book, and I do think it's really worth up the hype. And now let's get into the thrillers. I'm really excited. And the first one is another thriller that I already recommended, but I feel like it's perfect for audio. This is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Fair. I read a few Ruth Fair books in audiobooks, and the narrator that does her audiobooks is so good. I feel like the narrator and the writing style of Ruth Fair goes perfectly together, like really perfectly. It really gives the creepiness of the story. I just feel like the narrator is doing an amazing job, and the narrator plus the writing just makes you don't want to put the book down, not matter what. And basically, The Turn of the Key is about a woman that gets a deal to be a nanny of some children, but she needs to go to this house in the middle of nowhere because the family is really rich and they have a really big house, and she needs to go to this house and live with them and basically take care of those children. But this house is really creepy. A lot of strange things happen in this house, and she is hearing things at night, and just the whole book is so creepy but just so good. Definitely those kind of books that you say to yourself, I want to read one more chapter again and again. And I always say it about Ruth Fair's books. And yes, this is my most favorite book by Ruth Fair. And again, specifically, the audiobook is great. And yes, just creepy, amazing, really good for fall, winter. I highly recommend. Now, the next thriller is a new release thriller, and this is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Finney. Now, honestly, it wasn't one of my favorite thrillers that I read this year, but that's because I'm a really critical person. Like, it's really hard to please me, and I feel like the main reason is because I wasn't in the perfect mood for this book while I was reading it, because I'm a really mood reader. So if I'm not in the perfect mood, I won't enjoy it. But I still think that the book was so good. Also, the audiobook, just everything there. And basically, in this story, we are following a married couple, and this married couple is going to a vacation in some kind of old church or something like this. Just a vacation in the middle of the mountains in the snow, and their goal is to save their marriage because they are having issues. And while we are in this plot of the current time of the husband and the wife, there is also letters that the wife is writing to the husband. She's basically writing a letter to him once a year in their anniversary, and she never gave him those letters, so he never read those letters, but we are learning more about the relationship from the letters. Now, this book was pretty confusing at first, but believe me, keep reading until the end. I think that this is one of the thrillers that had the most amazing plot twists that I read this year. Like, the plot twists were so good, like I didn't expect them. I feel like this is a really good book to read now in winter because it's really snowy and just really creepy. And again, I didn't fully enjoy it while I was reading it, but it was mostly a mood thing. I feel like overall it's a really well-made book. And yes, the narrators did an amazing job. I just really loved listening to this book. Definitely give it a go and listen until the end, because everything will make sense later. And the next thriller is another thriller that initially I didn't really love. And this is a really unpopular opinion because usually people love this book so much. This is another book that I think was really well made, and the only reason that I didn't enjoy it was a mood thing, which is pretty sad. But also, except the book itself that was so good, the audiobook is incredible. Like, one of the best audiobooks. It has so many characters, so many voices. And this is Sadie by Courtney Summers. Now, you may heard this recommendation for an audiobook, and this is because this is really really good audiobook. We are following a teenager, and this teenager, her sister died, and she's trying to get revenge and to find the killer of her sister. Before, we don't know her sister was actually killed, I think. Like, I'm not sure if it was killed or disappeared, but something from this. And at the same time, we're following a podcast, and this podcast is talking about this main character, because the main character is getting disappeared. Like, we're learning in the start of the story that she went somewhere, and since then she disappeared. So we're following the podcast that is trying to understand what happened, and the manager of the podcast is going in her route and trying to interview all the people that saw her, and at the same time we're following her and her POV and what actually happened to her. So this is so cool because it's a mystery, but we're following the mystery itself while we are following also the one who is trying to solve the mystery. So it was just a really cool format, and again the audiobook was incredible. So many voices, a full cast of characters, a lot of sound effects. It felt like a real podcast of a real mystery. It was just so cool. And I also feel like the characters were really good. Like the whole book, the whole writing, it was really unique. Definitely not what I was expecting. I feel like the quality of this book is so high. It definitely delivers. When I look back at it, I do love it more than I loved it in the start. I really wish that I read it in more of a fitting mood, because I do feel like it's a really good book. And I feel like this is those kind of books that you definitely need to read audiobook, because it was just so well made with such good production. Definitely recommend. So yes, those were the audiobook recommendations. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and you found the recommendations useful. I do think all of those are just really good, specifically in audio. Again, if you didn't check my first video in the audiobook recommendation series, the link will be right here so you can check it out. I just really think that also the recommendations in this video were really good. And yes, until my next video, you can check more videos by me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye everyone!